In a world where empires rise and fall like the tides, one royal family has defied the odds for over 1,000 years. From the battlefields of Hastings to the grand palaces of London, the British monarchy's daring journey is a saga of resilience, power, and transformation. It's a tale of kings and queens who shaped history through fierce battles, political intrigue, and profound personal struggles. Their story reveals how traditions and adaptability have kept the crown alive through centuries of revolutions and change. Watch this epic journey unfold to discover the secrets behind the British royal family's enduring legacy. The origins and the Norman Conquest 1066. The story of the British monarchy's thousand-year survival begins with one of history's most decisive battles. The Norman Conquest of 1066. William, Duke of Normandy, crossed the English Channel and defeated King Harold II at the Battle of Hastings, claiming the English throne as his own. This conquest was more than a change of rulers. It laid the foundation for the modern British monarchy. William declared himself the sole King of England, uniting 7 smaller Anglo-Saxon kingdoms into a centralized realm. The Norman rulers introduced the feudal system, establishing military and administrative control that cemented royal authority. This centralization created a strong, organized monarchy that would serve as the backbone of English governance for centuries. However, the Norman kings faced significant challenges: resistance from the native Anglo-Saxons, internal noble rivalries, and the need to legitimize their rule led to political upheavals. The monarchy's relationship with its nobles, and later, the emerging parliament, began to define the limits of royal power. The Magna Carta, signed almost 150 years later, marked the first major step in limiting absolute monarchy, encouraging the notion of a constitutional monarchy. Throughout this era, the personal lives of kings and queens were tightly intertwined with politics. Marriages, alliances, and betrayals shaped not only individual fates, but the destiny of the nation. The royal family had to deftly balance tradition, power, and diplomacy to maintain their reign. This first chapter sets the stage for understanding how a single battle reshaped England's political landscape, and how the British monarchy began its long journey of survival through strength, strategy, and adaptation. In the next part, we will explore Magna Carta, the struggles of medieval kings, and how these events laid the groundwork for a monarchy that would evolve over centuries. Magna Carta and the early medieval monarchs following the seismic shifts set in motion by the Norman Conquest. The British monarchy entered a period of both consolidation and contestation. Throughout the 12th and 13th centuries, power struggles between kings and nobles shaped the very nature of royal authority, governance, and law. This era laid the groundwork for modern constitutional monarchy, beginning with one of the most iconic moments in British history: the sealing of the Magna Carta in 1215. The early medieval monarchs sought to solidify their rule across England and their growing domains in France. Kings like Henry II expanded royal justice and administration through reforms, but their exercise of authority often brought them into conflict with the church, the nobility, and their own family members. Henry II's tumultuous relationship with Archbishop Thomas Becket, culminating in Becket's murder in Canterbury Cathedral in 1170, illustrated the tension between royal power and ecclesiastical independence. His son, King Richard the Lionheart, became a legendary figure through his role in the Crusades. However, Richard spent relatively little time in England, leaving governance to others and accruing debts that fueled unrest. The reign of King John, Richard's younger brother, marked a turning point steeped in conflict and crisis. John's heavy-handed taxation, military failures, especially the loss of vast French territories, and disputes with the barons and the church created widespread dissatisfaction. By 1215, rebellious barons forced John to accept a foundational document, Magna Carta, which, though initially a pragmatic peace treaty, grew into a symbol of the rule of law and limits on royal prerogative. The Magna Carta established principles such as the king's accountability under law, protection of baronial rights, and due process for free men, while John sought to annul the charter soon after, and conflict continued. This document planted emerging ideas of constitutionalism that evolved over centuries. Medieval kings following John continued the complex dance between royal authority, baronial power, and the growing role of parliament, while monarchs like Henry III and Edward I, sought both to strengthen the crown and to consolidate law and order. Their reigns witnessed significant parliamentary developments. Edward I's model Parliament of 1295 incorporated knights, burgesses, and clergy, setting a precedent for the legislative assemblies that would later define British governance. The personal lives of monarchs in this period intertwined deeply with political fortunes. Marriages were often strategic, aimed at securing peace or alliances. Dynastic disputes and rivalries sometimes erupted into civil war, as seen in the later conflicts of the Plantagenet line. Royal courts became centers of power, culture, and intrigue, where the ambitions of nobles and the royal family intersected. Religious tradition also played a central role in medieval monarchy. The divine right of kings ideology began to take shape, asserting that monarchs ruled by God's will, a belief underpinning royal authority, but also setting the stage for future theological and political conflicts. This period witnessed England gradually transition from fragmented feudal lordships to a more centralized authority vested in the monarchy. But the seeds of constitutional checks, through documents like Magna Carta and parliamentary evolution, altered the autocratic potential of kings. The early medieval period was therefore foundational for the British monarchy. Es thousand-year survival, story a saga of power gained, challenged, and transformed. This expanded narrative elaborates on the political, legal, religious, and personal contexts of the early monarchy, filling out the historical richness expected for an immersive storytelling experience. The Wars of the Roses and the rise of the Tudors in the 15th century. England was engulfed in a brutal civil war that would redefine the monarchy and set the stage for a new royal dynasty, known as the Wars of the Roses, 1455 to 1487. This conflict was fought between two cadet branches of the royal house of Plantagenet, the House of Lancaster, symbolized by a red rose, and the House of York, represented by a white rose. The war was a dynastic struggle over who had the legitimate claim to the English throne. The seeds of conflict were sown during the reign of Henry VI, a Lancastrian king whose bouts of mental illness left a power vacuum. Richard, Duke of York, took the opportunity to assert his claim, challenging Henry's weak grip on the throne. The kingdom soon split into rival factions, and a series of bloody battles erupted over 3 decades, including notable confrontations like the Battle of Towton, one of the bloodiest in English history. The war saw a rapid succession of kings and moments of dramatic reversal. Edward IV of York temporarily seized the crown, only to be briefly overthrown and later restored. Both sides suffered devastating losses, including the death of influential nobles and heirs, plunging England into instability and chaos. Amid this turmoil, the figure who would ultimately reshape the monarchy emerged. Henry Tudor, a distant Lancastrian Clermont, who had lived in exile in Brittany and France. In 1485, Henry landed in Wales with an army and challenged the reigning Yorkist King Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Against the odds, Henry's forces triumphed, and Richard III was killed in battle, marking the end of Plantagenet dominance. Henry Tudor ascended the throne as Henry VII, founding the Tudor dynasty. One of his first acts was to marry Elizabeth of York, daughter of Edward IV, effectively uniting the feuding houses, and symbolizing the reconciliation with the emblematic Tudor-Rosa fusion of red and white. This political marriage was more than symbolism. It restored stability to a fractured kingdom and marked the beginning of a new era. Henry VII's reign focused on consolidating power, reducing the influence of the nobility, and restoring royal finances. He was cautious, but determined to erase the scars left by civil war. Through deft diplomacy and political acumen, he established a strong and enduring monarchy that would preside over an era of significant change. The Tudors would go on to dominate British history for over a century, overseeing dramatic religious transformations, overseas expansion, and cultural flourishing. Their story began in the blood-soaked fields of civil war and would become synonymous with the survival and evolution of the British royal family. Henry VIII and the English Reformation, the Tudor dynasty that rose from the ashes of the Wars of the Roses, would reach its most transformative chapter under King Henry VIII, who ascended the throne in 1509. Known equally for his magnetic personality and his tempestuous rule, Henry VIII presided over what would become one of the most seismic shifts in English history. The English Reformation At the heart of Henry's reign was a deeply personal issue that rippled outward, to alter the religious and political landscape of England forever. Henry's first marriage to Catherine of Aragon had failed to produce a surviving male heir. The Tudor line, a continuation, a matter of political survival and national stability, depended on a male successor. Henry's desire to annul his marriage and wed Anne Boleyn, a courtier he had fallen in love with, was refused by Pope Clement VII, who was also caught in the political web of European powers. This refusal ignited Henry's break from the Roman Catholic Church, culminating in the Act of Supremacy in 1534, which declared the king as the supreme head of the Church of England. By asserting religious independence, Henry not only secured his annulment, but fundamentally altered the nature of royal authority, uniting political and spiritual power in the monarch. The English Reformation was not a singular event, but a complex process involving religious, cultural, and political upheaval. Henry VIII's policies led to the dissolution of monasteries across England, seizing vast church lands and wealth. This redistribution strengthened the crown's financial base while dismantling centuries-old ecclesiastical institutions. Despite rejecting papal authority, Henry's religious doctrines remained conservative compared to broader Protestant movements on the continent. He retained many Catholic traditions, such as clerical celibacy and the belief in transubstantiation, balancing reform with elements of continuity to maintain social order. Henry's reign was also marked by ruthless enforcement of loyalty. Iconoclasts, dissenters, and political rivals faced harsh punishments, including notable executions, such as those of Thomas More and Anne Boleyn herself. This combination of personal passion, political acumen, and authoritarian control ensured the monarch's dominance. Henry VIII's reforms laid the foundation for religious conflict that would continue under his successors. His son, Edward VI, would spearhead a more radical Protestant approach, while his daughter Mary I attempted to restore Catholicism through severe persecution. Before Elizabeth I established the Elizabethan religious settlement that balanced Protestant faith with traditional ceremony, the English Reformation dramatically expanded royal power and redefined the monarchy's relationship with its subjects and the wider world. It was a bold assertion that England's destiny lay in the hands of its sovereign, daring evolution that exemplified the survival and ongoing transformation of the British royal family. Elizabeth I and the Age of Exploration, the reign of Elizabeth I, from 1558 to 1603, stands as one of the most celebrated periods in British history, often referred to as the Elizabethan Age or England's Renaissance. Ascending the throne after a turbulent period marked by religious wars and political instability, Elizabeth redefined the monarchy with her intelligence, skill, and determination, transforming England into a major European power. One of Elizabeth's earliest and most significant acts was to establish the Elizabethan religious settlement in 1559. This moderate Protestant framework sought to unify a kingdom divided deeply by the oscillating reigns of her Catholic sister Mary I and the earlier religious reforms of Henry VIII. Declaring herself the supreme governor of the Church of England, Elizabeth blended elements of Catholic ritual with Protestant doctrine to avoid further religious conflict, creating a church structure that would endure for centuries. Elizabeth's reign was marked by relative internal peace and economic prosperity. She skillfully managed her Privy Council trusted advisors who helped guide state affairs and maintained a government that, although centralized, was responsive to the growing commercial and social changes of the time. One of Elizabeth's defining moments came in 1588 when England faced the formidable Spanish Armada, a massive fleet sent by Catholic Spain intending to invade and overthrow Protestant England. Through strategic naval tactics, the English fleet famously defeated the Armada, signaling England's arrival as a major naval power. This victory not only boosted national pride but also ensured England's security and paved the way for overseas expansion. Encouraged by Elizabeth, English explorers such as Sir Francis Drake and Sir Walter Raleigh embarked on voyages that extended England's reach across the Atlantic. Drake became the first Englishman to circumnavigate the globe, while Raleigh's attempts to establish colonies in North America, including the ill-fated Roanoke colony, planted the seeds of future British imperialism. The Elizabethan Age was also a cultural golden era. Elizabeth herself was a great patron of the arts, fostering the growth of literature, theater, and music. The works of William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe and Edmund Spenser flourished under her reign, enriching English culture and identity. Economically, Elizabeth implemented fiscal reforms that repaired royal finances, promoted trade, and supported legislation improving poor relief to Poor Laws, which aimed to address social welfare. Despite numerous plots and threats against her life, including the notorious Babington Plot and uprisings in Ireland, Elizabeth's political acumen and firm governance saw her through decades of rule without ever marrying, earning her the sobriquet, the Virgin Queen. Elizabeth I's legacy of religious tolerance, naval prowess, cultural patronage, and political stability reshaped England's trajectory and secured her place as one of the most influential monarchs. Her reign laid the foundations for the British Empire's future and the modern constitutional monarchy. The Stuarts, the English Civil War, and the Glorious Revolution, the end of Elizabeth I's reign in 1603, marked the beginning of a new chapter under the House of Stuart, a dynasty that would reign from 1603 until 1714. James VI of Scotland became James I of England, uniting the crowns but soon encountering struggles that would reshape the monarchy. James I inherited a monarchy with growing tensions between royal authority and parliament. He believed in the divine right of kings, asserting that monarchs ruled by God's will and were accountable only to him. This belief clashed with Parliament's desire for greater influence in governance and taxation, setting the stage for decades of conflict. His son, Charles I, inherited these tensions, which escalated into outright confrontation. Charles's attempts to govern without parliament and enforce religious policies sparked widespread discontent. The result was the English Civil War 1642 to 1651, pitting royalists loyal to Charles against parliamentarians, led by Oliver Cromwell. The war devastated England and ended dramatically with the trial and execution of Charles I in 1649, the first and only time a reigning English monarch was publicly executed. The monarchy was abolished, and England briefly became a republican commonwealth under Cromwell's rule, termed the After Cromwell's death the monarchy was restored in 1660, with Charles II's return to the throne, known as the Restoration. However, the Stuart kings continued facing challenges: religious conflicts, political power struggles, and fears of Catholic absolutism. James II, Charles II's brother, angered many with his open Catholicism and authoritarian tendencies. His reign ended abruptly with the Glorious Revolution of 1688, when Parliament invited Protestant William of Orange and his wife Mary, James's Protestant daughter, to take the throne. This bloodless revolution established constitutional limits on the monarchy. The Bill of Rights 1689, passed under William and Mary, cemented parliamentary supremacy over the crown and guaranteed certain civil liberties. The monarchy would henceforth act within the Constitution's framework, fundamentally altering the relationship between king and people. The Stuart period was marked by extraordinary political upheavals, religious conflicts, and the ultimate transformation of the British monarchy into a constitutional institution. The era's events ensured the crown's survival by redefining power, balancing tradition with parliamentary rule. The Hanoverians and the rise of the British Empire. The Hanoverian dynasty began in 1714 when George I, Elector of Hanover, ascended the British throne after the death of Queen Anne, the last Stuart monarch. This transition was secured by the Act of Settlement of 1701, which ensured that only Protestants could inherit the English crown, thus bypassing many Catholic claimants. The Hanoverians, a German royal house, would rule Britain for nearly 2 centuries, overseeing momentous changes that shaped the modern British state and its far-reaching empire. George I and his son George II were primarily concerned with securing their place amidst the complicated politics of early 18th century Britain. With the rise of parliamentary governance and the emergence of the office of the Prime Minister, a role first held by Robert Walpole, they focused less on direct rule, relying heavily on ministers and Parliament to manage the affairs of state, which marked a gradual decline in the monarchist's direct political power and a move toward constitutional monarchy. This era witnessed England's transformation into a global maritime power. The British Empire expanded aggressively, fueled by colonial enterprises in North America, the Caribbean, Africa, and Asia. The crown patronized voyages of exploration and trade, establishing vital footholds that would evolve into a vast empire, the largest the world had ever seen. King George III, the longest-reigning Hanoverian monarch, faced turbulent times, including the loss of the American colonies following the Revolutionary War, which was Britain's first major imperial setback. However, his reign also saw the Industrial Revolution begin to reshape British society, fueling economic growth and urbanization. The Hanoverians also presided over critical military victories in the Napoleonic Wars. The Battle of Trafalgar, in 1805, won by Admiral Nelson, secured British naval dominance. Meanwhile, the Duke of Wellington's victory at Waterloo in 1815 ended Napoleon's threat, cementing Britain's role as a key European power. In 1801, the Kingdom of Great Britain united with the Kingdom of Ireland to form the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, reflecting Britain's expanding political and geographic scope. The Victorian era, ending the Hanoverian reign with Queen Victoria, was marked by unprecedented industrial, cultural, and imperial growth. Her long reign gave the world the image of a powerful, sophisticated monarchy intertwined with a mighty global empire. Despite the grandeur and successes of the Hanoverians, this period also had challenges. The monarchy gradually lost political influence as democratic reforms expanded suffrage, and social unrests emerged from rapid urbanization and industrialization. Yet the royal family adapted, promoting national unity through ceremonial roles, patriotism, and cultural leadership. The Hanoverians shaped the British monarchy into a modern institution, blending tradition with constitutional governance and guiding Britain into its era as a dominant world empire. The Victorian era and industrial Britain, Queen Victoria's reign, from 1837 to 1901, was one of the longest in British history and marked the zenith of the British Empire. Her era, often called the Victorian Age, was a time of unprecedented industrial, cultural, political, and imperial growth that transformed Britain into the world's foremost global power. Victoria ascended the throne at just 18 years old and quickly established herself as a symbol of stability and moral rectitude. Alongside her husband, Prince Albert, she helped restore the monarchy's dignity after periods of scandal and political unrest. Together, they promoted public service, the arts, and social reforms, which made the royal family more visible and accessible to the British people, cementing public loyalty to the crown. The Industrial Revolution, which reached its full momentum during Victoria's reign, revolutionized British society. The population more than doubled, urban centers expanded rapidly, and new technologies like the steam engine, telegraph, and railways transformed communication and transport. Factories proliferated, making Britain the workshop of the world. But these changes also brought challenges such as harsh working conditions, pollution, and social inequality. Victoria's reign oversaw key social reforms, including improvements in public health, education, and workers' rights. The poor laws were refined, and new laws raised standards for working hours and child labor. The royal family's philanthropic and public engagements aligned the monarchy with the social conscience of the era. On the imperial front, the British Empire expanded dramatically. Queen Victoria was proclaimed Empress of India in 1877, symbolizing Britain's dominance in Asia. The empire came to cover nearly a quarter of the world's population and landmass. British influence spread through colonies in Africa, Asia, the Americas, and Oceania, making London the center of a global network of trade and governance. Scientific and cultural achievements flourished alongside industrial growth. The Victorian era saw major advances in medicine, engineering, and the natural sciences, with figures like Charles Darwin and Michael Faraday, changing humanity's understanding of the world. Literature, architecture, and the arts reflected the age's complexity and ambition. Despite the empire's glittering achievements, Victoria's reign was not without controversy and contradictions. The exploitation and control exercised over colonized peoples generated long-term challenges and ethical questions. Social tensions and demands for political reform grew towards the end of her reign, setting the stage for the 20th century. Queen Victoria herself became a beloved figure of national identity, embodying values of duty, family, and continuity. Her legacy of moral leadership and imperial vision shaped the monarchy's role well into modern times. The world wars and the modern monarchy, the 20th century was a transformative era for the British monarchy, marked by two devastating world wars and profound social change. The monarchy's survival through these turbulent times affirmed its adaptability and symbolic significance as a unifying force for the nation. King George VIII, who reigned from 1910 to 1936, led the monarchy through World War I, a conflict that reshaped the political and social landscape of Britain. During the war, the royal family distanced itself from its German roots by changing the family name from Saxe-Coburg and Gotha to Windsor. George V's presence and visits to the front lines bolstered public morale. Despite enormous sacrifices inflicted on the British people, the monarchy remained a symbol of continuity amid uncertainty. Between the wars, the royal family faced personal and political challenges, including the abdication crisis of King Edward VIII in 1936. Edward's decision to abdicate the throne to Mary Wallis Simpson, a twice-divorced American, was unprecedented and tested the monarchy's resilience. His brother, George VI, ascended the throne unexpectedly and became a stabilizing figure during a crucial historical moment. World War II further challenged the monarchy and the country. King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, later known as the Queen Mother, became symbols of British endurance and defiance. They famously refused to leave London during the Blitz bombings, sharing hardships with their people. This connection deepened public affection for the royal family, showcasing its role beyond ceremony as a living embodiment of national unity and hope. Following the war, Britain faced decolonization, economic hardship, and social change. The monarchy had to redefine its role in a rapidly evolving world. Queen Elizabeth II, who ascended the throne in 1952, presided over these transformations with a commitment to public service, modernizing the monarchy while preserving its traditions. Her reign saw significant constitutional developments, increasing democratization and the continuation of the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of former British territories fostering international cooperation. The Queen's tours and engagements across the globe reinforced Britain's enduring ties with its former colonies and showcased the monarchy as soft power. Despite some crises and changing public attitudes in the late 20th and early 21st centuries, questions about relevance and media scrutiny, the monarchy has maintained its position as a respected institution. It continues to embody continuity, ceremony, and national identity in a constitutional framework where political power resides with parliament and elected leaders. The 20th century proved that the British monarchy's true strength lies in its ability to evolve, embrace change while respecting history, and symbolize unity during both triumph and trial. This resilience cements its place as a cornerstone of British life and culture today. The British monarchy in the 21st century faces a unique blend of challenges rooted in modern societal values, changing public expectations, and the need for institutional transparency and relevance. Despite its ancient origins, the monarchy has been actively modernizing to balance tradition with contemporary demands. Key challenges include maintaining public support amid generational shifts, where younger Britons tend to be less supportive than older generations. The monarchy must address concerns about hereditary privilege in a democratic society and justify its costs carefully to maintain legitimacy. Scandals and media scrutiny involving individual royals add pressure to demonstrate accountability and integrity. Modernization efforts have included legal reforms, promoting gender equality and succession rights, and removing religious restrictions, such as allowing monarchs to marry Catholics. Transparency initiatives such as publishing royal financial reports and increasing public access to royal activities aim to foster trust and open dialogue. The royal family strives to embody values of service, duty, and national unity while adapting to issues like climate change, technological disruption, and evolving cultural expectations. Succession planning, exemplified by gradually transferring responsibilities to younger members, signals a commitment to continuity and renewal. Overall, the monarchy's survival into the contemporary era reflects its institutional resilience and capacity for evolution. Its future will depend on maintaining relevance and public confidence by balancing accessibility with dignity, upholding tradition, and engaging with a diverse global society. Conclusion. The enduring legacy of the British monarchy spanning over 1,000 years. The British monarchy's journey is a saga of resilience, transformation, and adaptation. From the Norman conquest of 1066 to the modern reign of King Charles III, this institution has witnessed and shaped the tides of history, politics, culture, and empire. The monarchy endured dynastic struggles, civil wars, religious upheavals, and revolutionary change by continuously evolving. Early monarchs forged centralized authority amid feudal conflict, while the Magna Carta heralded the first steps toward constitutional limits on royal power. The Tudor era redefined sovereignty through religious reformation and the Stuarts navigated political turbulence that led to the establishment of parliamentary supremacy. The Hanoverians brought constitutional monarchy into fuller form and oversaw the rise of the British Empire, the largest the world had seen. Queen Victoria's reign epitomized industrial progress and imperial expansion, while the 20th century tested the crown's relevance through global wars and social revolutions. The modern monarchy balances tradition with the demands of democracy, media scrutiny, and evolving cultural values. What makes the British monarchy uniquely enduring is its capacity to adapt to changing times, without losing its symbolic potency as a nation's unifying figure. It embodies both the continuity of history and the living presence of ceremony and culture, navigating personal conflicts, political challenges, and public expectations. This royal family has maintained its place at the heart of British identity. As Britain moves forward, the monarchy's legacy remains a testament to the delicate balance of power, tradition, and change, a story of survival and influence unmatched in world history.